You didn't lose energy, you learned to hide it. He gets up, goes to work, answers messages, comes home. The body keeps moving. The face keeps functioning. But somewhere along the line his inner dial dimmed. What begins as a string of explanations, it's just a phase, everyone lives like this, I'm fine, becomes a quiet method of survival. The mind, tired for years, learns to spend as little as possible. Goals shrink. Curiosity grows faint. Desire becomes a background hum. Even the things that once felt important are edited down to the bare minimum needed to keep going. From the outside, it looks normal. From the inside, there is a slow trimming. Less planning, less pushing, less asking for more. Small choices compound. Missed bedtimes, skipped workouts, sugar for convenience, numbing screens, each one a tiny compromise. Over time, those compromises alter mood, drive, and the hormonal signals that feed male vitality. It is not dramatic, it is cumulative. It is not failure, it is adaptation. This is not a lecture. It is a calm observation. The first brave step is simply to notice. To stop blaming yourself for being exhausted and start watching how you live. Watch the rhythms of your day. Watch the little shortcuts that save energy now but cost it later. Observe without shame. Once observation is in place, small changes can add up. Rebuilding momentum rarely means a sudden overhaul. It begins with one adjusted habit, one reclaimed hour of sleep, one brief move that becomes movement again. Over weeks, these shifts reset feeling and attention. They help the body remember what it can do, and they invite the hormones that support male energy to find steadier ground. If this feels familiar, ask yourself, what tiny compromise do you make most days? Leave a short comment, one honest line. Your observation matters more than a plan right now. Curious what the first practical step looks like? In the next video, we'll name a single, simple habit you can try tomorrow. You didn't fall asleep all at once. The tiredness arrived like water in a slow leak. A missed dawn run here, one less meal with real protein there, a night flipped through a phone instead of sleep. At first, each choice felt reasonable. I'll rest tomorrow. Everyone's busy. I'm fine. An omniscient voice watches and knows these are not single failures, but a pattern. A man learning to spend as little energy as possible so he can keep going. This economy of effort does something quiet and steady. It trims desire at the roots. You stop raising your hand for projects at work. You stop planning trips that require effort. You answer texts later, cancel plans more easily, and explain it away. The body keeps moving, jobs done, bills paid, kids taken to soccer, while the interior life narrows. Day by day, the mind adapts to less input, to fewer small victories. Motivation becomes a scarce resource parceled out like a luxury. There are physical echoes to that change. Sleep cycles fray, appetite becomes inconsistent, and movement becomes extra instead of essential. Over time, those things nudge the biology that supports male energy, including natural testosterone, in softer, cumulative ways. Not catastrophe, just attrition. Not drama, just habit. It's important to hear this without shame. The mind is trying to survive with what it has left. The turning point isn't a heroic overhaul. It's observation. To notice the pattern without judgment is the first brave act. When you stop rehearsing excuses and start watching how you actually spend energy, small openings appear. A consistent bedtime, a short walk after lunch, a simple protein at breakfast. Each one asks only a little and gives back a little. Momentum begins not from willpower, but from tiny, reliable changes. Pause for a moment. What small concession have you slowly allowed to become permanent? Write it down or leave a short comment. Name it, no defense. In the next video, we'll quietly map the daily choices that most reliably lift natural testosterone. Sleep, movement, and what you eat. No extremes, just steps you can try tomorrow. He moves through his day with practiced economy. The kettle boils, the commute happens, the emails get answered, all performed with the same quiet, measured effort that used to be reserved for urgent things. From the outside, it looks fine. Inside, a different currency is being spent. Minutes of attention, sparks of desire, the small risks once taken without thought. Each concession is tiny. Each one alone is reasonable. I'll skip the gym tonight. I'm tired. I don't need to speak up about that at work. I'll have one more drink to relax. Over years, these sensible choices pile into routines that protect energy in the short term but drain it in the long term. The mind adapts. It learns to prefer the path of least resistance, trimming goals that require extra effort. Ambition is quietly scaled back. Initiatives are postponed until they seem less important than they used to. This isn't weakness, it's survival. When a system is low on fuel, it conserves. What's important to notice is that conservation changes the system itself. Mood dulls, drive softens. Hormones that support male vitality, including natural testosterone, respond to signals from sleep, stress, movement, and intention. When those signals say same, the body settles into a lower baseline. Recognition is the hinge. Not a verdict, but a fact. Patterns have formed. The brave thing is not to punish yourself for them. It's to observe them without blame. Watch when you choose ease over presence. Note the small rituals that keep you comfortable but smaller. Each observation is data, clear, usable. From there, small reversals accumulate. An extra 20 minutes of sleep, a walk taken deliberately, a boundary spoken softly. These acts are not dramatic, but they shift the signals your body receives. Curiosity is the first practical tool. If this sounds familiar, ask yourself, what tiny habit have I kept that saves effort now but costs me energy later? Leave a comment with one small thing you notice about your day. In the next video, we'll look at 3 simple, evidence-informed habits that reliably nudge energy and natural testosterone back toward the levels you remember. He learned to ration himself the way a city rations water in drought. Small valves closed first, later nights, skipped workouts, quick meals at the desk. Each choice felt reasonable in the moment. The narrator knows this pattern intimately. Not a sudden collapse, but a patient trimming, a slow redesign of desire so that the day could be survived with the least expenditure of will. At first it appears as excuses. It's just a phase. Work is busy. I'll get to it next week. Those phrases are not lies so much as coping mechanisms. They preserve the minimum. A job performed, children cared for, bills paid. What disappears are the margins. Time for strength, for sleep that actually restores, for meals that fuel rather than merely fill. Over months and years, that economy of effort changes more than routine. It shifts mood, narrows curiosity, blunts motivation. The body follows the mind's new script. Fewer challenges, lower intensity, reduced signals that once told the endocrine system to stay robust. This is not a moral failing. It is adaptation. The mind learns to protect itself by lowering its own demands. The narrator watches this process without judgment, cataloging how small compromises nudge hormones and habits into quieter states. Low energy is not always an enemy. Sometimes it is a symptom pointing to a life that has been negotiated down. Observation is the first brave act. Start by watching, not fixing. Note where energy leaks out. Late screens, meetings that stretch, meals eaten standing up. Keep the notes simple. Time of day, mood, what you did or didn't do. The narrator suggests tiny experiments. Add 10 minutes of daylight in the morning, swap one processed snack for a protein-rich option, choose one night to prioritize sleep. Small consistent changes nudge physiology and attention more than heroic overhaul. Curiosity matters here. Ask, where did my energy go? Comment below with one small habit you'll watch this week. In the next video, we turn those notes into the first practical steps, specific, manageable moves to reclaim momentum and rebuild steady vitality. He had learned to economize, not out of cleverness, but out of necessity. When waking felt heavy for years, the mind found ways to spend less, smaller goals, safer choices, fewer invitations. It dressed excuses in routine. I'll do it tomorrow. I'm just tired. And those excuses became the scaffolding of a new life. Little by little, desire and drive were shorn back so the day could continue without collapse. Notice how this looks on a normal morning. The snooze button 3 times, coffee on the go, skipping a real breakfast, sitting for hours, exchanging real conversation for quick texts. Nights are late and shallow. Movement is incidental. Hobbies wait. These are small compromises. Alone, each one feels trivial. Together, they shape mood, appetite, sleep, and even the silent signals your body sends about strength and energy. This isn't a moral failing. It's adaptation. The mind and body learn to preserve the minimum. Less effort, less risk, less reward. And when that becomes the default, Parts of you that once powered ambition and libido quiet down. Motivation narrows. Hormones that respond to sleep, stress, nutrition, and movement don't get the signals they need to stay robust. So where does change begin? Not with a grand plan. With watching. Stop blaming, start observing. For 1 week, be a neutral witness. Note 3 things each day. When you felt more alive, when you felt drained, and what you ate before each shift in energy. No judgment, just record. This simple map shows patterns you didn't notice because you were busy explaining them away. Then pick one tiny experiment for the next 7 days. Go to bed 30 minutes earlier, walk for 10 minutes after lunch, or add a protein-rich bite to breakfast. Keep it small, keep it trackable. Observation plus a single, repeatable habit creates feedback. Over time, those micro-corrections add up. Sleep improves, moods lift, movement becomes easier, and the body begins to respond. Curious what a week of quiet observation reveals? Leave one short note below about what a normal day looks like for you. No shame, just description. In the next video, we'll turn your notes into a simple plan that nudges natural hormonal resilience without drama. He stops blaming himself and begins to watch. That watching is not a verdict. It's an act of attention, quiet and steady. From this place of observation, the places where energy leaks become visible, the couch after dinner, the late-night scrolling, the skipped strength session, the days that begin without sunlight. These were not single failures. They were repeated choices small enough to feel harmless, repeated long enough to shape a new baseline for how his body and mind operate. Change does not arrive as a grand overhaul. It slips in through tiny openings. A more regular sleep time nudges deep rest back into the body. 15 minutes of resistance work 3 times a week tells the muscles and the hormones they still matter. A protein-rich breakfast, less booze across the week, a walk in daylight at noon. These are not dramatic gestures. They are signals, steady and honest, that the body learns to read. He measures not by immediate peaks, but by small, reliable returns. Mornings that feel a little clearer, afternoons with a little more focus, a libido that resurfaces quietly instead of shouting. Hormones respond to patterns. If hunger, stress, and inactivity have been the old language, this new grammar, sleep, movement, sunlight, nourishment, social contact, begins to rewrite instructions sent to the body. Start simply. Pick one habit you can keep for 2 weeks. Go to bed 30 minutes earlier, park and walk 3 extra minutes. Add a palm-sized portion of protein to breakfast. Keep it small so you keep it honest. Notice what changes: mood, sleep, appetite, the way tasks feel less heavy. Record one line each evening. What shifted? What stayed the same? That line is proof. The proof is momentum. This is not a sermon. It is testimony to patience. Observation was the first courage. Routine becomes the next. When momentum accumulates, vitality is not theatrical. It is rooted, quieter, and more reliable. Curious what one 2-week habit experiment could look like for you? Comment with the habit you'd try in the hour you're most drained. In the next video, we'll map a simple 2-week plan you can actually keep. He had been moving through days like a man walking a familiar room in the dark, hands out, careful, used to the furniture of compromise. From outside you could see the routine: wake, work, scroll, sleep. From inside it felt like conservation, saving what little push remained for the things that absolutely had to be done. The mind narrowed. Desire softened. The body kept moving, but the engine ran on fewer cylinders. Watching him now, with the distance that lets patterns appear, you notice how small changes add up. He let go of "I don't have time" and asked, instead, "What can I do for 5 minutes?" He turned off the phone an hour before bed and found sleep crept back in like an old friend. He walked a little faster, lifted a little more often, ate a plate with more color. None of these were dramatic. None were heroic. They were steady, patient nudges that told his body it could expect more, not immediately, but over time. There is no sudden revival in this story. Vitality in middle age is less about fireworks and more about clearing the dust. Hormones respond to rhythm. Consistent movement, steady sleep, meals that support rather than spike, moments that take the edge off stress. As those rhythms rebuild, so does appetite for bigger things, clearer thinking, a firmer mood, a drive that feels less like pressure and more like intention. The important truth is this: Recovery is an economy of small returns. You don't need to overhaul everything. You need to observe what you've been spending your energy on and decide where to invest a little more. Observation, once again, is not a judgment. It's the map. Notice one thing today. Watch how it makes you feel by the end of the week. Post a line below, one small shift you tried or one small habit you want to test. Curiosity is the doorway. Your comment is the first step out of automatic living. In the next video, we'll translate that curiosity into a simple, repeatable routine you can start tomorrow. 3 practical moves to steady sleep, reduce stress, and gently nudge natural testosterone back toward balance. He learned, slowly, to live on the smallest possible reserve. Not in a dramatic collapse, but in tiny concessions. Fewer early mornings, less planning, postponing hobbies, saying later to conversation and to himself. From the outside, he kept working, loving, showing up. Inside, priorities were trimmed like low branches, quiet, almost invisible. Over years, that economy of effort rewrote what felt possible. Ambition dulled, desire softened, and even the body's signals shifted to match a lower expectation. This is not about blame. An omniscient eye sees how systems adapt, sleep squeezed, stress left unaddressed, movement reduced, calories inconsistent. Hormones respond. Energy levels settle into new normals. Testosterone, one marker among many, moves with habits and context. The point is not to hunt a number, but to notice the map those small choices have drawn. Observation is the first brave act. When he stops insisting, "I'm fine," and begins to watch how he sleeps, what he eats, how he rests, who he spends time with, the outlines of change appear. Simple, repeatable moves send messages back to the body. Regular sleep gives recovery. Strength work tells muscles to stay responsive. Sunlight and steady meals support rhythm. Meaningful connection eases stress. Over weeks, these signals rebuild permission for higher energy. You don't need a dramatic overhaul. Pick one manageable habit and practice it until it becomes ordinary. A 20-minute walk after dinner, a consistent wake time, 3 short resistance sessions in a week, clearing alcohol on some nights. These are small deposits into a system that was spending on survival. Over months, deposits accumulate, mood steadies, focus returns, and curiosity about life grows again. Curiosity, which small habit, if you actually committed to it for 4 weeks, might shift how you feel each day? Leave a reflective comment naming one habit you'll try and what you expect to notice. When you're ready, watch the next video, where we lay out a simple, realistic 4-week plan to rebuild routine and support natural vitality, step by step.
Imagine responding to those signals with kindness and curiosity, recognizing how every choice can build back what's been worn thin. The path forward isn't about a sudden resurgence demanding Herculean feats. Instead, it's a slow, steady gathering, a rekindling of embers held patiently until they blaze anew. This awakening invites us to rewrite our narrative. A journey from exhaustion to renewed vigor that honors complexity and embraces strength as a living, breathing experience. It was late one evening, the kind of night where the silence presses heavily against your awareness. I found myself pacing through my apartment, wrestling with an unfamiliar restlessness that refused to dissipate. My thoughts spun in a loop, consumed less by exhaustion and more by an uneasy questioning of my relationship with fatigue itself. Unlike the predictable tiredness that follows a busy day, this felt like an anchor tied to parts of me I'd neglected. The intricate dance between my hormones, lifestyle, and environment. I realized something crucial. Our vitality isn't affected solely by visible habits or blatant stressors. Instead, it's often shaped by subtle, systemic factors quietly dictating the tempo of our lives. A turning point came when a conversation with a healthcare professional shifted my focus beyond surface symptoms. They introduced me to the idea of hidden disruptors, elements like chronic inflammation, exposure to environmental toxins, and the overlooked role of gut health in hormonal regulation. I hadn't considered that the fatigue clouding my mind might be rooted in internal imbalances I couldn't sense plainly. This expanded understanding sparked a realization that coaxing strength back is not about sheer force but intricate restoration. The body's systems communicate in vast, nuanced networks, and neglect in one domain ripples across the whole. What felt like a loss of vigor was actually an invitation to delve deeper into layers of physical well-being I'd ignored. One concrete example was how prolonged exposure to artificial light blurred my natural rhythms. I started tracking my sleep habits and noticed a stark difference between nights when I limited screen time an hour before bed and those spent scrolling endlessly. The former yielded rest that felt regenerative. The latter left me waking heavy and foggy. This wasn't merely a matter of getting enough hours, but syncing with the body's internal clock, which commands far more power over energy cycles than I'd realized. Ignoring this connection felt like trying to sprint on a treadmill set against me. Exertion without forward momentum. At the same time, I explored breathing exercises not as relaxation tricks but as tools to recalibrate the nervous system. One afternoon, guided by a mentor well-versed in this craft, I practiced a technique focused on extending exhalations, engaging the parasympathetic nervous system to counterbalance daily stress responses. The sensation was unexpected. A tangible unspooling of tension, accompanied by clarity, that sharpened my focus in the hours that followed. It dawned on me that my patterns of shallow, rushed breathing had been quietly depleting my stamina and destabilizing emotional equilibrium. Incorporating mindful breath shifted this dynamic, offering a reservoir of calm strength previously untapped. Equally profound was the way I learned to recognize emotional fatigue independent of physical tiredness. There were moments when I felt mentally drained despite adequate rest, and difficult days when motivation wavered without clear cause. Through journaling, I noticed recurring patterns linked to unresolved internal conflicts and suppressed feelings, burdens that sapped more energy than I expected. This process wasn't easy. Articulating discomfort required honesty I sometimes avoided. Still, confronting these barriers gave me the freedom to release weight long carried silently. It became clear that mental and emotional clarity fuels the body's energy just as much as nutrition or exercise. Another revelation involved the social environment's impact. Conversations with close friends revealed a shared, unspoken exhaustion related to societal expectations of toughness and self-sufficiency. We learned how withholding vulnerability in the name of strength actually tightens stress's grip, creating unseen fractures in our well-being. This insight propelled me to foster deeper connections where admitting struggle wasn't weakness but a step toward genuine resilience. Trusting others softened the relentless push to perform and open spaces for restoration. Group discussions not only validated personal experiences but rang a collective call to acknowledge and dismantle myths of solitary endurance. One evening, I experimented with a nature walk under fading sunlight, intentionally disconnecting from devices and plunging into sensory awareness. The rustle of leaves, the cool earth beneath my boots, the breath of wind against skin. This immersion sparked a profound sense of presence and replenishment, reminding me that the human system thrives on connection beyond physical activity or scheduled routines. These moments were less about performance and more about surrendering into life's rhythms, allowing energy to flow unimpeded by the constant noise of obligation. It illustrated a different kind of strength, fluid, adaptive, and rooted in deep listening. Now, think about your own experiences of low energy. Is it truly about not trying hard enough? Or could hidden factors within your environment, mindset, and body chemistry be silently pulling you down? Consider how attention to your surroundings, intentional breathing, emotional awareness, and the courage to lean on community might unlock new wells of strength. This journey invites you to embrace complexity and nuance, peeling back layers to find an authentic resourcefulness grounded in holistic care. Instead of charging forward blindly, we learn to move with wisdom, cultivating enduring vitality that sustains all dimensions of our lives. Reflecting on this journey so far, I find myself standing at a crossroads where everything explored weaves into a subtle but undeniable current, pulling me forward. It's as if each layer of insight I encountered was a thread intricately spun, and now those threads tangle into a larger tapestry, complex, alive, and quietly humming with meaning. This is not a neat package with clear edges. No, it's more like stepping into the heart of a shifting labyrinth, where every turn reveals new contours in my understanding of strength, vitality, and presence. I feel a stirring inside that both comforts and unsettles, inviting me to lean deeper into an unfolding narrative that surpasses simple explanations or easy fixes. As I navigate this internal landscape, I notice moments when clarity glimmers, not as sudden epiphanies, but as subtle shifts in how I hold myself, how silence greets me, and how the pace of my breath marks the rhythm of awareness. It's much like witnessing dawn unfold slowly across a horizon. First a faint glow, then color spreading and stretching until darkness retreats. In these quiet spaces, I recognize potential waiting to gather momentum, like roots reaching silently beneath soil, gathering strength unseen until a shoot bursts forth with purpose. The fragile quality of this emergence feels sacred, a reconciliation between what has been lost and what is ready to be reclaimed. There are times when I catch myself hesitating, tempted to accelerate, to chase certainty and results with impatient hands. But the totality of what I've glimpsed resists such urgency. Instead, it calls for patience, a willingness to dwell in complexity without rushing toward conclusions. It's as if the very essence of renewal depends on honoring the interplay of surrender and action, softness and resolve. I hear an internal conversation unfold, one that challenges my habitual impulse to control outcomes and invites me to inhabit presence fully, even when the path ahead remains veiled. Within this interplay, I witness strength reshaping itself not as domination over circumstance, but as graceful dance with life's rhythms. In the midst of this awakening, I imagine conversations with others who walk similar roads, their voices mingling with mine, sometimes steady, sometimes questioning, reminding me that our experiences pulse with shared humanity. There is comfort in knowing that beneath individual struggles lies a collective thread, a communal heartbeat echoing through personal stories. This sense of connection expands my own perspective, revealing how personal transformation resonates outward, drawing in broader possibilities of healing and growth. It makes me acutely aware that restoration doesn't happen in isolation but blossoms at intersections where vulnerability and courage meet. I also sense the invisible architecture supporting this transformation, a foundation built over time through countless small choices, moments of honesty, and deliberate shifts in attention. It's not a sudden emergence but an intricate layering, like sediment forming solid rock beneath turbulent waters. Each action, each pause, consolidates the terrain on which new strength can stand firm. This understanding moves me away from simplistic narratives of winning or losing energy, urging recognition of vitality as a living system, fragile yet resilient, constantly adapting. To engage with it fully requires a nuanced approach, one that embraces both the internal landscape's mystery and the external world's demands. As I continue walking this path, the edges of who I am feel less fixed and more fluid, like a river carving new channels through familiar ground. There's an invitation here to explore identity not as a static monument but as a flowing process, shifting and deepening with intention. I find myself holding both the weight of past shadows and the lightness of emerging possibility in a delicate balance, understanding that growth often involves stepping into spaces of uncertainty with open hands and steady heartbeats. In this quiet unfolding, I perceive strength not as a destination but an ongoing practice, one shaped by listening to subtle signals, honoring limits without judgment, and inviting resilience through presence grounded in authenticity. The path forward beckons, not with the glare of demands or promises of immediate transformation, but with the soft illumination of deep knowing rising from trust in oneself. I stand poised between what was and what can arise, ready to engage with the profound invitation woven through all that has been encountered, a call to awaken fully to the vitality waiting quietly within. The night I finally allowed myself to slow down, I discovered something unexpected, not just relief, but an awakening. It wasn't a dramatic moment marked by intensity or grand revelation, but a quiet, almost whispering realization that resonance lives within stillness. Sitting alone, I noticed how the relentless chase for momentum had dulled my senses. I was carrying a weight invisible to others but heavy enough to cloud every decision, every breath. This heaviness was not a sign of weakness, but an invitation, a call urging me to re-examine my relationship to strength and vitality in a way I hadn't considered before. Energy, I realized, is less about constant pressure and more about cycles of renewal woven into our very being. In these silent conversations with myself, I saw how elusive control often masks deeper longing for authenticity. The world outside demands a performance, a facade of unabated toughness that leaves little room for complexity or fragility. Yet beneath this surface, I sensed a quiet resistance stirring, an undercurrent of resilience that did not demand violence or haste but invited gentleness and patience. It became clear that reclaiming my power required surrendering the myth of invincibility. Only by embracing softness as part of strength could I begin to gather the scattered pieces of presence that define who I truly am. One evening, as the sky deepened from fading orange to midnight blue, I stepped outside and breathed in the cool air. The sense of separation I'd felt so palpably within myself began to dissolve, as though the breath connected me back to a larger rhythm, one older than my anxieties, fears, and doubts. Nature did not rush or force itself. It simply existed, moving through seasons with steady grace. I realized that my own healing would unfold best if I listened deeply to those rhythms within me, honoring the ebbs and floods that give life its texture. This insight invited me to envision masculinity anew, not as a fixed point to conquer but as a landscape to explore, rich with valleys and peaks, stillness and flow. The journey, I came to understand, requires persistent curiosity. There are days when the way forward feels obscured, when the familiar weight urges retreat rather than advancement. On such occasions, I remind myself that relinquishing certainty is part of the process. It's in those unguarded moments, where vulnerability rises without apology, that the seeds of transformation are most fertile. I see now that power grows not merely through force or endurance but by forging connection to my body, my emotions, and the world that encircles me. Each small act of acknowledgement, each choice to listen, plants me closer to a life pulsing with authentic energy. Conversations with friends have deepened this realization. Sharing the quiet struggles carried beneath daily smiles illuminated how loneliness often escalates when we think we must bear fatigue in isolation. Opening space to speak freely about what drains us fosters unexpected support and fuels collective hope. I've learned that vulnerability is a currency of courage, weaving networks of belonging that amplify strength beyond personal capacity. Together, this communion transforms exhaustion from a sentence into a shared passage, one that navigates towards renewed vitality through empathy and solidarity. As I continue, I hold this truth intimately. Restoring my energy is not a victory over an external enemy, but a reunion with my own essence. Life's demands will never cease, yet how I engage them depends on my ability to nurture balance and awareness. It means tuning into the subtle pulse beneath impatience and distraction, cultivating rituals that honor both my limits and desires. It requires acknowledging the seasons within, the moments of quiet resilience as indispensable as bursts of action. Through this evolution, I envision a version of myself alive with clarity and grounded presence, equipped to face each day with steady purpose. If you find yourself walking this path alongside me, know that this journey is less about fixing perceived flaws and more about embracing complexity with compassionate intent. The way forward is woven through attentiveness to the shifting nature of strength, a dance between surrender and determination, silence and expression, breath and movement. Let us welcome this unfolding with open hearts, trusting that beneath the surface lies a wellspring of power ready to rise, not as a sudden blaze, but as a steady flame kindled by faith in our capacity to heal and grow.